Hello, everyone. Welcome to the program. This is your definitive business morning program here on Channels Television, Nigeria's news leader. I am Bosun Mafaya, and it's Wednesday, the 21st of March. Let's get the program lift-off as we're looking at the lift-off of the Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, the first definitive Pan-African trade, which some 50 African heads of state are now gathered in Kigali, the Rwandan capital, today for the signing of the historic CFTA agreement. That's the big story today on the African continent. No other story is bigger than this in terms of business, economy, trade, finance, and markets. It's taken about 6 years, almost 7 years, since the African heads of state and government have been working on a CFTA agreement. Now we have it in black and white. This morning, the Uhuru Kenyatta, the Kenyan president, says this document will be signed, and if it has any other imperfections, it shall be dealt with moving forward. Of course, we're just about 2 hours behind Rwanda in terms of the time zone, so the event is currently underway. On Sunday, Nigeria backed out at the 11th hour out of the CFTA deal. It's Wednesday last week when the Federal Executive Council approved the presentations of the various ministers and ministries and agencies for Nigeria to move ahead. President Muhammadu Buhari was given the go-ahead by the Federal Executive Council to proceed to Kigali to sign this document. Then letters, or what you call the travel details, were sent to a number of government officials who will accompany the president, and that we cited late last week. And then suddenly, within 3 days, the Nigerian authorities made a turnaround and says the president is no longer heading to Kigali, and we will not sign because we need more, quote and unquote, stakeholders' inputs. Meantime, yesterday, of course, the events preparatory got started. In Kigali already is Nigeria's former President Olusegun Obasanjo, who is the Pan-African trade envoy, as it were, who's taken this very seriously over the last 3 decades. He spoke yesterday at a breakfast meeting which he organized in Kigali ahead of today's signing ceremony, and the ex-former president stressed the importance of intra-African trade and why the contribution of the private sector is very important in the CFTA. We will continue to focus on this on the program today and in the days ahead. Meantime, we got a story in which is breaking, and of course you're watching Channels Television right now. You see that as a breaking news. Our correspondent here on Channels Television has confirmed that most of the abducted schoolgirls in Dapchi town of Yobe State have been returned. There is jubilation, of course, as expected, in the town over the return of the schoolgirls. There have been heavy security presence in Dapchi town, and our correspondent spoke with one of the returned girls and her parents. 5 of the girls are said to have died while in captivity, Lala said, a few weeks, while 1 of them is still being held by the insurgents. The Dapchi girls have been returned barely 24 hours after Amnesty International accused the Nigerian army of failing to react quickly to prevent their abduction in the first place. And that's the good news we have this morning as we wake up to the 3rd business and economic and markets day of the week. Jubilation in Dapchi, Nigeria's Yobe State, in Yobe State, Nigeria, over the return of those, because about 200 or more of them were adopted a few weeks ago. And Channels Television is on the ground getting all the necessary information for you. Our news bulletin, the first news of the day here on Channels, is up at 11 o'clock, and you have more details as they're coming through from our correspondents and bureau across the country, bringing you updates and necessary interviews and explanations about what has been done. So yesterday, President Buhari, let's get back to business. President Buhari tells all ministries, departments and agencies to submit the details of their Budget 2018 proposals to the National Assembly no later than Friday, March the 23rd. That's just the next 3 days. You remember the brickbat between the legislative and executive branch about who is responsible for the delay of the 2018 appropriations. The Senate says it's the government, that is the executive branch, that have issued invitation to MDAs to step forward with the details of their budget proposals and to defend them, but that about 86 of these MDAs are yet to respond. And they accuse them that some of them says they've got overseas travel, so they couldn't step inside the building, the National Assembly, to defend their budgets. Now, the president is taking that up and says all MDAs should submit their reports and present themselves immediately to the National Assembly to defend their budget for 2018. That's to the what you call the riot act there from the chief executive himself, the president and commander-in-chief, kicking the budget back up there at the National Assembly. Meantime, we want to continue kicking more rail projects into place. The Honorable Minister of Transport, Rotimi Amici, yesterday says President Buhari had a meeting with the President and the CEO signed off Nigeria to source a fresh $15 billion US. That's about a lot of money, about 4 trillion if you use some exchange rates, for two major rail projects. Port Harcourt, all the way down South Nigeria, Nigeria's oil city, that's what Port Harcourt is called, all the way to the Maiduguri, the last frontier or major city in Nigeria's northeast bordering Lake Chad. And the second corridor will be from Lagos, where I work and play, all the way down to Calabar, linking two strategic economic cities in southern part of the country. Meantime, the Nigeria's State Oil Corporation says it's still searching. For what? For oil. The NNPC chief, Mekanti Baru, says 8 oil wells will be drilled in Chad and Gongola basins, 4 each in those regions. Lake Chad Basin, 4, and Gongola basins, 4. In a statement released on Tuesday, the NNPC chief says, while waiting for normalcy to return to the Lake Chad basin, where a number of folks were abducted over a botched attempt to drill oil there about a year ago, says the NNPC have stepped up efforts in the lower Benue Trial seeking for oil. Let's get back to the biggest story on the African continent today. Nigeria has all it takes to sign the CFTA agreement, but we backed out at the last minute. This CFTA had run through at least 2 administrations, 6 years, but we couldn't get our acts together and be part